Now we have Chapter 8, Our House on Hypalexo Island, read by Maddie Oberting.
Chapter 8, Our House on Hypalexo Island. You never do things the easy way, Mama said for the 10th time. Well, it makes sense to me, Papa answered a little grumpily. We were standing on a narrow strip of land that Papa had decided should be our new home. It was an island, and, as Mama had pointed out many times, there was no bridge between us and the shore. No one else lived on the island, and as far as we could see, no animals lived here either. The way I see it, Papa said, this is the perfect place to put down roots. We're protected by the lake, just in case any bears get it in their minds to pay us a visit, and we'll have plenty of fresh water. Mama grumbled. Let's just hope we don't need to go anywhere very fast. No one asked me, but I thought Papa had picked a fine spot to live. I liked the idea of living on an island surrounded by the clear, warm water of Lake Worth. As we'd been sailing down the lake, I'd seen dozens of fish, some almost as big as me, shooting through the water, and there were always flocks of birds flying above. The island Papa picked was about 2/3 of the way down Lake Worth. He said he wanted to build our house on the highest point on the south end of the island. Uncle Will and his family could build their house on the north end of the island. Uncle Will was supposed to join us a few days later. We camped out until Uncle Will arrived. He and Papa left right away and returned to Jupiter to bring the Victor II back, this time by ocean. Miraculously, all of our possessions in the Victor II survived the hurricane relatively undamaged. When Papa and Uncle Will returned, Papa announced that he was going to start the house. He said he was going to build a fortress that could survive any hurricane. This he did. Our house stood for almost 100 years and withstood countless hurricanes. But it also took a lot of extra work to build a hurricane-proof house. First, we had to scavenge lumber and wood from the beach. A hurricane 3 years earlier had caused many ships to wreck, and their cargoes and pieces of their hulls were strewn from miles up and down the sand. Once we found a piece of wood we liked, we had to drag it sometimes for miles up the beach, through the jungle, and over the bridge ridge, and then raft it across the lake to the island. It took almost 3 weeks to collect all of the wood we needed, and we camped out those 3 weeks under a tent Uncle Will brought for us. As we combed the beach looking for lumber, we also found all sorts of useful articles, including bolts, nails, and pieces of copper and brass. This made Papa happy because he could sell the copper and brass by the pound to Mr. Titus, who owned the store at Sandpoint. Although almost 120 miles away, it was the nearest store we could purchase flour, coffee, sugar, and ammunition, which were all essentials. Papa selected only the very best timbers for our house. The corner posts were 10 inches by 12 inches, about triple the size of corner posts on any house in Chicago. The corner posts were the cross beams from ship's holes and had been treated with some type of tar to prevent water rot and insect infestation. After he got the post to the island, Papa worked for days to dig into the solid limestone under the topsoil. He dug holes 2 feet deep, and then he and Uncle Will sunk the corner posts in the stone. They next framed in the walls with timbers that were 6 inches by 9 inches. The wall studs were 4 inches by 4 inches, double the size of wall studs used in houses elsewhere. The roof was a whole different kind of problem. There were no shingles on the beach, so we had to do what the Seminoles did. We cut and dried palmetto fronds and layered them over each other to create a roof. The palmetto fronds were plentiful and easy to use, but neither me nor Mama liked our new roof very much. The first problem was that the palmetto fronds rotted quickly, and Papa had to replace the roof every 2 to 3 years. The other big problem was cockroaches, which were called palmetto bugs for a good reason. They like to live in palmetto fronds. The first time a big black roach dropped from the ceiling, Mama almost yelled herself hoarse, and I ran screaming from the house. No matter how much time I spent in the woods with tiger bow legs, I never got used to the roaches, and now I have to live with dozens of them in the roof of my house. Then, one day I heard Mama shriek, but it wasn't because of another roach. There was a red snake up on the rafters. Papa came running in when he heard her holler, and he laughed when she pointed out the snake. "That's good news," Papa said. "You watch, the snake eats cockroaches. In no time at all, I bet he'll take care of your little bug problem." Sure enough, in just a few days, roaches stopped dropping from the ceiling, and Mama declared that the little red snake was part of the family. She even named it Orion. after the great hunter in Homer's Odyssey. From that point onward, we had much less of a cockroach problem. 2 months after moving onto the island, we had our first visitors. It was a group of 3 Seminole men who had appeared in our yard in that strange, silent way that Seminoles have of traveling. One of the Indians hailed Papa. He knew us from the lighthouse. "Pierce," he asked, "what you make?" The Seminole pointed at the hutch Papa was building. A hutch was a special building used to store dry foods like flour and sugar. It was built on raised legs like stilts, and the legs were sunk into buckets of turpentine. The turpentine smelled awful, but bugs like roaches and ants couldn't climb through it, so it protected the dry goods. "It's a cage to keep my takey and yatuches," Papa answered. The 3 Seminoles looked confused for several moments before they saw Papa's grin and knew that he was only kidding. The Seminole then asked Papa how long we had been on Hypoluxo. "Hypoluxo," said Papa. "What does that mean?" One of the Seminoles waved at the lake and said, "Means water all around. No, get out." "Oh," said Papa, shading out the sun with his hand so he could look around the island. "We call it an island, but I like Hypoluxo better. It has a nice ring to it." From that day onward, we too called it Hypoluxo, as it is known to this day.